Hello, eighth grade. Good to see you all again. I'm going to go over a couple things with you today, not just your work, but I'm going to go over some tips for your introductory paragraph of your essays. I'm also going to go over some of the characters that we've learned more about in the book. And I'm also going to go over your chapters that you were to read yesterday. So you may want to pause this if you don't have all your materials for that, or just make sure you pay attention to the timestamps on the video and you can go back and check those things as you need to. All right, so I'm going to share my screen with you and we will go ahead and get started. So first, with today's work, you're going to read chapters 58 through 59. And then you have your discussion post with your one response that's due today. So make sure you finish that by 11:30. Weekly grammar is due tomorrow, so this is more practice with usage. Couple things to remember is that a lot of times people will overcorrect and try to use I when you still need to use me, so look at how it's used in the sentence. The other thing is that we use the word well when we are talking about an action. So she, um, she scored well in the game. We wouldn't say she scored good in the game. We'd say she scored well. Or we would say, I'm not feeling well, not I'm not feeling good. Okay, that's how we usually talk, but that's actually not correct. We use good to describe things. That's an adjective, and I put a little note on the sheet as well, but I wanted to put that bug in your ear in this video. Also, as I approve your TS and supports, go ahead and start working on your paper. Some of you may have gone ahead and done that, and that's fine, but I'm just letting you all know that this is a more independent process for you guys because we can't meet together. Use your rubric, the PowerPoints and videos, and what we discussed with previous assignments to help, and please contact me if you have questions or feel stuck, okay? So if we need to set up a Zoom meeting, I could work that out maybe with you and your parents, or you can email me, message me in the chat, especially today with it being Wednesday. I don't have any senior thesis presentations to watch, so I should be more available through email and the LMS chat. But I've not had a lot of people contact me, so I hope that's a good sign and not a bad one. All right, so coming up, your novel analysis is due Wednesday, May 6th. So think of this as kind of an in-class essay. You're not going through as many steps of the process as you did with your research paper, but you can use some of those things to help you on a smaller scale. If you want me to look over your rough draft, with that said, this is optional. And I'm doing this more just as an assurance for some of you guys who may be more nervous. You can send me your rough draft no later than Monday. And by Monday, please send it during the day. If you send it at night, then I may not get it till Tuesday. So, no later than Monday so that I not only have time to look at it and provide you with good feedback, not rushed feedback, but so you have time to make changes. Because if you think about it, if you were to give me your rough draft on Tuesday or even Monday at 11 p.m., then I'm not going to be able to look at it until Tuesday and then get it back to you all. And so say I've got several of those, then you won't get your paper back till maybe Tuesday afternoon, and then it's due the next day. And it's not due until 11:30 p.m. on Wednesday, but you really don't want to wait and do all of it at the last minute. Okay. All right, so structuring your essay, so some reminders, things to think about. Again, use your handout. Remember our outline format. You can use that or other brainstorming techniques to help you. That's fine. You're not turning any of that in. That's just a help for you. So some basics. Remember, in your introduction, you want your hook, or your attention getter, same thing. You want a brief overview of the book and a thesis statement. So I'm looking at your thesis statements today. So you've already, pretty much done that part. Body paragraphs, each support takes a paragraph. Okay, so let's say your first support has to do, we're talking about revenge. So let's say that it has to do with, you're going to explore Edmond's treatment of Danglars and how revenge plays there. Okay, then you're going to take that whole paragraph for that one support, and then say your next support was to talk about his revenge against Villefort. Then you would take, that whole next paragraph and talk about Villefort, and say you combined Fernand and Caderousse. He may actually combine like Danglars and Caderousse, but you would take a full paragraph for that. You don't have to divide it by his four enemies. Those are just the people that popped in my head at the first thought. So each support's going to be a paragraph. Then your closing Remember, summarize no new information, restate that thesis, and then leave your audience thinking. So kind of like you want a hook at the beginning, you want a final thoughtful statement at the end. All right, so let's look at this intro paragraph a little bit more. First, when it comes to a hook, so one thing you can do is you can use a quote. You could use a quote from the book. You could use another quote about revenge or forgiveness. That's fine. You could use a maxim or a moral. So that's kind of similar. A maxim is kind of like a proverb or some kind of wise saying. A moral, you could make a statement, about revenge or forgiveness that is pretty strong. Okay, don't just say like, revenge is bad and forgiveness is good. You could think of something yourself that, sounds kind of wise that might be a good start. You could also give shocking factor data, but that's usually more, not so much for a literary piece. Question, so you could do that. Just make sure it's a probing and thought-provoking question, not, have you ever read The Count of Monte Cristo? So you're going to tell them about it anyway, so don't ask them that. Come up with something that's a little more thoughtful. You could do a brief story. It would need to be really, really short. It could be some kind of a personal story that you're okay with sharing. It could be a story from the Bible that you think relates that you could reference and mention in like 2 to 3 sentences. Keep it short because this is a short paper. So you don't want your introductory paragraph to be like a whole page when your whole paper is going to be like 2 pages. All right, overview. So 2 to 3 sentence summary of the main gist of the book. So what I've done is provided a few examples. And, if it ends up being like 4 sentences, that's okay. I'm just giving you a ballpark so you don't spend 8 sentences describing your book. So here's one example. So for Call of the Wild, you could, and this is pretty detailed, you could go shorter, but for those of you who tend to go longer, this is about as long as it needs to get. In The Call of the Wild, Buck, a spoiled dog living in California during the Yukon Gold Rush, is kidnapped and sold north to become a sled dog. As Buck meets new dogs and owners who range from ignorant to cruel to kind, he evolves not only into the leader of a group of sled dogs, but what London calls the dominant primordial beast. That's 2 sentences. By the end of the story, Buck's ties are severed from humanity when his only truly friendly owner, John Thornton, is killed by the Indians, and Buck kills the chief and goes to live with the wolf pack, where he becomes the leader and follows the call of his ancestors, the call of the wild. Dun, dun, dun. Okay, so obviously I could edit that, but I just typed that up very quickly. Those are 3 sentences. They're longer sentences. So, you can, using those different clauses and things like that, like as so-and-so, blah, 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 by the end of the story. Those kinds of phrases help move it along, and then you can tuck information like a spoiled dog living in California during the Yukon Gold Rush. That's in a positive. So you use that to tuck into your sentence along with just the fact that he's kidnapped and that he's sold. And for a summary this short, you don't have to mention every single character. I didn't have time to go into all of his owners that he had. I just briefly mentioned what kind that he had. Okay, ignorant, cool, kind, picked 3, and then I moved on. I mentioned John Thornton like once, but I didn't go into all of the details there, again, because I didn't have time. Right. Romeo and Juliet. So here's one, I think it's a little bit longer, but there's a lot of drama and back and forth. So in Romeo and Juliet, 2 young people from feuding families fall in love at a party and marry the next day in secret. That's like the first 2 acts. Before they can inform their families, Romeo gets into a fight with Juliet's hot-tempered cousin, kills him, banished from the prince. Meanwhile, Juliet's father arranges for her to marry Count Paris, and she flees to the friar who gives her a deadly potion to make her seem dead in order to delay the wedding and give him time to send for Romeo. Unfortunately, Romeo hears Juliet is dead, returns to her tomb, kills himself. Upon waking, Juliet sees her love dead, takes dagger, stabs herself. Death of these 2 young lovers leads to their parents' long-awaited reconciliation and repentance. Okay, so if you notice, I did not include every single detail, every single conversation. This is not a play-by-play. This is as long as it needs to get, even for a play like Romeo and Juliet. This one's shorter. Red Badge of Courage is a little bit easier. Red Badge of Courage, young man named Henry Fleming joins the human army to prove his bravery and manhood, but the uncertainties and horrors of war are far from the heroic deeds he imagined. Okay, after running away in the second battle, so that's really, I'm getting his emotions, but, first part, joins the war, then he runs away. Okay. Henry, along with his new friend Wilson, learns to fight well and becomes the new color guard and one of the most respected men in his regiment. Okay, there's a lot I didn't share in there because it's just a quick summary. They just need to know the main point of the book. Okay, so take a breather now, get a drink of water if you need to. I am. And we're going to go over our character keeper chart updated. Again, I'm going to post this PowerPoint on the LMS page for today's video, so you will also have that. All right, so Abe Busoni, that's again one of the Count of Monte Cristo, aka Edmond's aliases. So this is the guy, remember he's the Italian priest. He's responsible for freeing Bertuccio, who was wrongfully accused of Madame Caderousse and the jeweler's deaths. And he's also responsible for manipulating Bartolomeo Cavalcanti, okay? Lord Vilmore, he manipulates Andrea Cavalcanti. And there's a lot of other things they do, but these are kind of the things that you need to know now. Danglars, so, you know, he had lost money because of his wife's, you know, false speculations, and then the telegram that came through that was really misleading. Wonder who did that? Not his wife. I bet it was the Count. So he loses more money when his business deal with Jacobo falls through. So remember, Jacobo is one of the Count's friends that helps out. We'll mention him in a minute. But he loses more money with that. And then he intended for his daughter to marry Albert, but remember, he changed his mind and decided he wanted her to marry Andrea. Okay, and we'll talk about that more in today's chapters. All right, so Caderousse, so he's the one that blackmails Benedetto. We talked about that for a couple of days. And then he attempts to steal from the Count and is killed by Benedetto. So if you've not written that on your character keeper chart, you need to go ahead and make sure you do that. So you've got the who's who. Right, Fernand. So since we last talked about just him, well, his treason's revealed because of a newspaper article and Hades' testimony, and he commits suicide. Villefort. So second wife, we know she's trying to murder Valentine so that her son Edward can inherit the family fortune. So she's the one that's poisoning everybody. Right as I drink my water, that was real good. All right. Okay, Mercedes saves Albert's life and the Count's by taking them out of their duel, or talking them out of their duel. Sorry, she didn't take them out. She talks them out of their duel and leaves Fernand. And lives in Edmund's old house, right? So, and the money that he gave her, that's what she's able to live on. So she talks about going into a convent, but she doesn't. All right. So Maximilian, remember that's the son of Monsieur Morel. We've heard him mentioned a lot because he loves Valentine so much. And he's a close friend of the Count and was actually going to be one of his seconds in the duel. Emmanuel was going to be the other second. And of course, he's married to Julie Morel. That happened earlier in the book. Jacobo, so we just mentioned him in connection with Danglars. He's used for revenge on Danglars because he creates a business deal with him and then backs out, and then that causes Danglars a lot of money. Benedetto, again, Andrea, convinced by Lord Wilmore to be Andrea Cavalcanti and was going to marry Eugenie. You know, the Count kind of set all that up. But then the Count exposed him, and the police came to arrest him for the murder of Caderousse. He tried to escape, but was caught in a hotel outside the city, which we'll talk about today. All right, so Madame Danglars, so she had an affair with Lucien Debray, and her husband blamed her for his loss of 1 million francs. Lucien Debray, he's the politician and friend of Albert, who's also having the affair with Madame Danglars, and provides her with information about her husband's investments. But even though he's having the affair with her and giving her all these money tips, he really just sees her as a business partner with some benefits. Okay. So Eugenie, we've talked about her a little bit. So she's the daughter of Danglars and his wife, and she was supposed to marry Albert. She's like, I don't want to marry Albert. And the reason she doesn't want to marry Albert, she's like, I'm an independent woman. I want to go, you know, and explore my music the way that my friend, you know, gets to do. And yeah, so she doesn't want to be married. She's, you know, been passed from Albert to Andrea by her dad, and she decides to run away with her friend. And we'll talk about that today. They're going to run away to Italy where they can go be artists. And she disguises herself as a man because two women traveling together, that would have been a very dangerous thing. So if at least one of them looks like a guy, if they can't get a guy to travel with them, then people are less likely to bother them. So they're caught, though, when Andrea finds himself in their hotel room. We'll talk more about that in a minute as he tries to make his escape. So Louise is her friend who runs away with her, and then of course the girls get caught and have to go back home to mom and dad and all of that stuff. So Valentine, her grandfather, we just see him constantly rescuing her, first from the marriage to Franz. She doesn't want to marry him. She wants to marry Maximilian, but her stepmother's still trying to poison her, so her son can inherit everything. Madame de Villefort, that's the lady trying to poison everybody. In fact, she succeeds a few times. So she murders the Marquise and the Marquis de Saint-Marin. So that's Valentine's grandfather and grandmother on her mother's side. And then Barois, okay, so that was Nordier's servant. And then she's unsuccessful in murdering Valentine. Her motivation for all of this is to kill off all the people that stand in the way of her son Edward having all of the inheritance. Again, so the Marquis and the Marquise, they were poisoned. They were Villefort's first in-laws from his first marriage. Nordier, he's the grandfather that's paralyzed. He's taking brucine, and that helps to make him immune from poison. His servant's the one that dies, so there's the connection there. And then he saves Valentine from her marriage to Franz by revealing to Franz that he was the guy that had killed his dad when they were, trying to bring Napoleon back. So Barois, servant of Nordier, accidentally killed by the poison. So you're just connecting the dots here. If arrows and things help you with all of this, that's fine. I know it's a lot to write down, but we're trying to clarify all these people and their connections. We need to make a map if you had time. All right, so Dr. d'Avrigny, this is the doctor that cares for the Villefort family and thinks that the multiple deaths mean that someone's being poisoned. He sees the symptoms, says this is a result of poisoning, and he thinks Valentine is the one that's doing it. Okay, and multiple times he and Villefort talk, and Villefort's like, don't say anything, don't say anything. And then it gets to the point where the doctor's like, I'm not coming back here because I don't want to be part of this. I'll keep my mouth shut, but I don't want to be part of this. So Albert, he escapes the marriage to Eugenie when Baron Danglars changes his mind. So that's kind of convenient for him. Of course, he's also, it hurts his ego a little bit, but he didn't want to marry her anyway. Then, of course, he's shamed by his father when his father's treason becomes known, his betrayal. And he challenges the Count to a duel. But remember, he forgives the Count, calls off the duel because he hears of what Fernand, his dad, did to Edmond. And then he leaves with his mother. He leaves Paris to become a soldier. Franz is his friend who was supposed to marry Valentine, and she didn't want to. And then he's the guy that Nordier's like, yeah, I killed your dad. You probably don't want to marry my granddaughter. At least that's the miscarrier translation. All right. Beauchamp is another one of Albert's friends. He's a journalist, and he's the one who told Albert about his father being exposed and losing his political seat. And he was also going to be one of the seconds in the duel. Haiti, this is the last one for today on characters. So remember, she's the daughter of Ali Pasha and the Count's slave. So he had bought her, but it was more of like he bought her to redeem her. And she's in love with him. Doesn't want to leave, even though she's free. She's like, no, I want to stay with you because I love you. And she refuses to leave him, and her testimony ruins Fernand. So even though she's kind of backseat and really quiet, when it comes time for her to speak out against Fernand and what he did to her and her family, she is very... Okay, so in chapter 55, Eugenie Danglars, again, she's engaged to Andrea. And Valentine collapses and has a seizure. Maximilian goes to the Count for help, and the Count responds very callously. He's like, well, it's God's justice on Villefort's family. But then Maximilian is absolutely appalled and, says, but I love her. And the Count is completely stunned. And first we see his bitterness on page 402. He says, you love Valentine, you love that daughter of a cursed breed. So because of who her father is, the Count doesn't value her life. But Maximilian, kind of puts it a little bit in perspective. And so the Count realizes he's taken his revenge too far. And we know this because on page 402, it says, God punishes the indifference of men who remain cold and proud before the terrible spectacles he presents to them. I laughed like an avenging angel at the evil men do to one another. But now I myself have been bitten by the serpent I was watching. Maximilian groaned. Be strong and don't lose hope, said the Count. I'm here to watch over you. Maximilian shook his head sadly. I tell you to hope, continued the Count. Listen to me. If Valentine isn't dead now, she won't die. Go home now and wait till you hear from me. Your coolness frightens me, Count, exclaimed Maximilian. Do you have power over death itself? Are you more than a man? Monte Cristo looked at the young man with a tender, melancholy smile and said, I can do much, my friend. Go now. I need to be alone. Okay. So he finally, through this friendship that he has with Maximilian, um, kind of receives again a little bit of compassion, starts to show a little bit of compassion. Valentine hasn't died yet, though. It is because Nordier had begun to give her doses of his medicine so that the poison wouldn't kill her. So because he was taking brucine and he kind of knew what was going on, he started giving her small doses. Because if you remember what the doctor and the count said, small little bits at a time will build up an immunity. But people who haven't had any, they get, too much, and then they're gone. All right. So who's moved into the house next to the de Villeforts? Well, that was Abbe Busoni. Now, Eugenie Danglars and Andrea Cavalcanti are getting married in chapter 56. And then Monsieur de Villefort is not at the ceremony because the Count found new evidence in the murder of Caderousse, and he found his vest, wonder who had that, which contained a letter addressed to Baron Danglars. And then Andrea, he escapes before the police can arrest him for murdering Caderousse. All right, so you will want to read 58 and 59. I'm going to go over chapter 57 really quick. So Eugenie Danglars and Louis Stiamelli, they decide to go away, run away to Italy after Andrea escapes, and Eugenie pretends to be a man, like I said earlier, so that traveling will be safer. All right, so we will talk about chapters 58 and 59 tomorrow, and I hope that you have a wonderful, blessed day.